Hello, I'm lodging editor Kate Hughes. Thank you for listening to Lodging on Demand. It's now been more than 5 months since the COVID-19 crisis upended the hotel industry, far longer than everyone expected back in March. Hoteliers have had to adjust their plans over and over, all while preparing for recovery. For this episode, I spoke with Chris Russell, CEO of Spire Hospitality, and Michael Cady, VP of Marketing for Charlestowne Hotels, about how they've adapted and have positioned themselves for recovery. So the COVID-19 crisis has stretched on much longer than anyone originally anticipated. How has your pandemic strategy changed since April and May? And do you think it's going to change even further in the fall? Chris, do you want to kick us off?
Well, I think when the pandemic hit, there were really three priorities for us. And, what we thought was going to be a 90 to 150 day problem is obviously longer. But I think the three things that we really focused on at first were, one, the guests and employees and the safety. And two is really the impact of our business. And three is just making sure that our owners and investors were comfortable with directionally what we were doing, what we wanted to recommend. If you kind of go back, really our bigger picture strategy early on the guests and employees was, of course, the safety issue. I mean, nobody knew what to expect. We had to over communicate. We continuously try to stay on top of the CDC guidance, which was changing daily, as we all know. And then really getting those guidelines in place for cleaning, disinfecting, distancing, and training the staff. Trying to secure supplies from vendors was difficult at first. There was a run on sanitizers, as everybody knows. You couldn't find it anywhere. And of course, everybody was telling you to put out sanitizer, but it wasn't there. I think the most important thing was really establishing the standards of care and the process in case a guest or employee gets sick. I mean, obviously it was new territory to us. We wanted to appropriately handle it. In order to do some of this, we really developed an internal website to keep track of all this. I mean, we were getting guidance from the CDC, AHLA, states, brands, the whole bit. So we just found one place to put all of the information together because it was really kind of hard to keep up with. Our business strategy had to be fluid. We had a lot of cancellations, as I know everybody did. We tried to rebook as much as we could, although we had limited success with that since it was kind of unknown. I think most people canceled, the first 3-4 months out and didn't really focus on the back half of the year because I think people generally had the confidence that, they could easily book again. Working through contract issues, we had to be very flexible, force majeure clauses. None of the contracts really, dealt with the pandemic. So, I think that was pretty difficult. And of course, the layoffs. I mean, like the industry, we had a lot of layoffs, and we thought they would be temporary, but they turned out to be, a lot more permanent than we thought. The good news is the brands were helpful. They gave us some relief. But as it relates to our partners and our investors, we really went and did line by line analysis and said, listen, if we close the hotel, here's what it's going to cost. If we keep the hotel open, here's what it's going to cost. So all of that initially was very reactive, of course, because it happens so fast. And, not too different, I'm sure, from what everybody else had to go through. And, it's changed. I mean, right now we have a much longer window than what we thought was 90 to 150 days. It's, could be 6 months, 12 months, and longer. And we have more time to think and more time to plan right now because we're not reacting as much. But, there's still a lot to do, and there's a lot of unknowns out there.
Absolutely. And Michael, what's your experience been?
Well, obviously April, May, and June was really all about to Chris's point, cleanliness and cancellation messaging was a critical piece. Daily calls with all operations team, just about owner messaging, what owners are, having trouble on loans and funds. Obviously, the connectivity of PPP and how that relates to each hotel and helping the owners walk through that. So in vendor negotiations, right, going to every single vendor and asking for 3 months on services basically for those months. So there was that side, and the cleanliness and cancellation will be around for a long time. I think more so, and we're an independent hotel company, so we have over 50 hotels that are independent, right? So we don't necessarily rely on any other brands to help push information through. So from a marketing standpoint, we really had to put a lot of energy and did a massive bounce back strategy starting in May, which basically was cyber-esque and flash sale-esque, but for an extreme amount of long time in just about every digital channel imaginable. And it really worked. Thankfully, yes, there was a lot of cancellations on those bookings too, but April, May, and June was all of that in one. It's like I've had 2 kids, and I know like when you have a kid, the first like 120 days you kind of don't remember because you're sleep deprived and everything's happening. So that's what it felt like to me. Whereas like I can't even remember those 3 months. I literally can't. And I think, July, August, and September have been interesting where, a lot of our hotels were open and then they closed and then they reopened. Some stayed open, all a mixture of that. But in July, August, September, we've had all hotels open. And so we really used some of the same marketing strategies as we did in the bounce back, but really pushed more about content and programming. So what can be done outdoors, what can be done remotely, and then again, supplying them information about our cleanliness and cancellation policies. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Moving into October and December, we'll start focus on, instead of mass marketing and mass communication, we'll start doing more segmented promotions to different types of guests based on, their needs and what we need to fill the hotel. All of that being taken under consideration, really the core piece has been owner relations like never before. Yes, we always were in touch with our owners and had calls and whenever P&L, but we're talking to our owners on a daily basis and supporting them all the way through. And really, it's going to take 2 to tango here, and we're trying to help them, and they're sticking with us. And so it's really improved our owner relations in this tragedy. It's really helped us connect with our owners and make sure they know we have their back.
I totally agree with that. And I think also in addition, and Michael mentioned that the communication of the hotel teams and the guests and the clients and going above and beyond, making sure that you have that touch point with them and the daily calls has been critical. And, you think about the disinfectant, we do have the brands, and we're all but a couple of our hotels are branded. And, the brands would come out with a program because they wanted to be the first out, and it didn't necessarily line up with the CDC guidance. And then another brand would come out with a program, and then the CDC guidance changed. The disinfecting, the standards, the protocol going forward for the next 1 to 2 years is very much like the technology was the last decade. All the brands starting to compete with each other. Can you top this? And, well, you got an electrostatic, cleaner. Oh yeah, well, we've got an electrostatic too. All of a sudden there's going to be a run up of programs like that you're going to have to compete with and stay on top of. Because, the truth is, and to their defense, nobody really knows and nobody really knew. So everybody's learning at the same time.
What have been some of the biggest challenges that you guys have faced? You mentioned the layoffs. You mentioned keeping up with the standards. Michael, why don't you start? What's the biggest issue you've encountered?
Well, especially those first 3 months, we were doing daily forecasts. It was an exhausting effort, at the corporate level. We've since gone to biweekly forecasts, but that's definitely been the most challenging, literally changing forecasts and changing, cash flow analysis on a daily basis based on hotels closing, opening, government restrictions that, canceled triple digits in cancellations. So it's been a real challenge on the forecast side. I think, one thing we've done at the corporate office here, and we house all of our marketing, revenue management, and quite a few other functions and support our hotels. We've done no corporate layoffs. Something we're really proud of. And trust me, it's been a very tough thing to do from a cash flow standpoint, but we've really believed in keeping the nucleus of our corporate support for the hotels. And so the cash flow and forecasting, I think, has been a big challenge, a little softer challenge that's not as dire, but it definitely impedes innovation and connectivity and collaboration. Is, we have a real strong connection here between our hotels and the corporate office. And so going remote and going digital, it's, there's great benefits to everyone working remotely at home, but I have seen, more of those organic strategic conversations that create innovation just not happen. And so you almost have to schedule strategy and schedule innovation. And sometimes that's not the best thing. And so when you combine that with obviously not being able to do celebrations and gatherings and, sort of connectivity between human beings, which is a thing that I think we can't lose sight of, it really has affected us. Now, we've done all we can in terms of connecting us and overriding those things. But yes, going remote and digital, I think, hurts innovation in some regards.
I think that our team has worked so hard for 20% occupancy. It felt like we were running 90%. And I think everybody's learned an awful lot by this. And I think that, I've gone through a couple of downturns, but, never would I have thought that it was this significant, this fast, for this long. I think what's been challenging is the perpetual changing guidance from CDC and trying to react and trying to communicate that to the employees and the guests. State changes, guidance, the shutdowns and the openings of the states. All of a sudden they're open and they're closed. And, so that's been a little bit of a challenge. Staffing's been a challenge. I mean, you're probably trying to bring employees back. We had a little bit of a summer surge, like I'm sure Michael did. But it's been a bit of a challenge trying to get people back in the door. A little bit of fear, a little bit of unemployment benefits offset, which I think was good for everybody. But nonetheless, it was a little bit of a fear to come back. Adapting to the food service.
I concur so much. I think that's so well said. And we have the same issues there. I'll give you a good example. Even this weekend, last weekend that just happened, right, where the government is saying you can visit from certain states, and then you can, just totally changing. We were sold out at a hotel in Newport, Rhode Island, set to have a pretty darn good weekend in their typical peak season. Well, then there's sort of government guidance saying, early in the week that, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, a couple other states, you can't visit Rhode Island anymore. And over $100,000 in cancellations, literally that day. And then later on that week, they changed their story a bit and said, no, well, you can visit. And so trying to recoup that cancellation was just we were calling every guest, and we didn't recruit close to even 30% of it. And so I get why they're having to do things, and they definitely have the public in mind, right? But trying to navigate the offs and ons, the closings, the openings, which states you can visit, which ones you got to have a 14-day period. It's been a constant uphill battle to try and navigate this situation.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think the other challenge is that, we've got, trying to rebook or trying to get clients to come back. And right now there's just a lot of concern about, if I'm a meeting planner, if I'm in charge of a company booking a meeting, what does that look like? Am I putting my employees at risk? Putting them on a plane, going to a hotel? And, what liability are they responsible for? And what safety issues they're responsible for? So I think that's a big issue right now as well. And, listen, it's been, I haven't really talked a lot about it in the media, but I think more than anything out of this whole thing, it's a displacement of so many employees. Worked so hard for so many years, and we can't tell them when they'll be back. To me, it's really unfortunate struggle that nobody's really highlighting, and it's not really talked about in the news or publicly, or very little, or it's talked in different contexts. And, on the flip side, I think the good news is we've got a lot of great employees in the hotel, kind of like the unsung heroes who are in the front lines of our hotels. They show up every day, they're committed, they have guest interaction. They don't have the opportunity to sit and stay home and wait this out. They have the most interaction with our guests and the general public and they don't really have to be there, but we're lucky to have them. And I think that that's a good thing that's come out of this.
So as the pandemic continues, how do you simultaneously focus on survival and positioning for recovering? And how do you keep in mind all of the people that you're managing at the same time?
I'll start. The way we're looking at it is it's almost like opening a new hotel. I think you need to over communicate with our guests and employees, your current clients, your future clients. I think if you approach it, you got to be aggressive in sales. You got to control your costs. You don't spend what you don't have, and you don't hire until you need. I think if you make the hotel teams part of the process and rebuild the business together, and they're all vested, they've gone through a lot together. Our teams are going to be the best recruiters of business and be the best recruiters of employees. And the recognition has to continue. I think that's an important component. In our company, we lost our annual recognition / general managers meeting this year because it was scheduled early April, and we ended up doing a Zoom celebration for everybody. And we did the same thing with the big old head cutouts and stuff like that. And I think a lot of hotels are doing a lot of things like that to celebrate their staff, just keeping people motivated.
Great. And Michael, what about you?
I think, as from a survival standpoint, I'll talk a little bit about our revenue strategy, and it's not ideal. We like to be more longer term strategic, but we're really looking at analytics and adjusting short-term strategies almost on a daily basis. We are treating 21 and 22 almost like rebound years, but really the future, I think, is completely unpredictable. And because of that unpredictability, we have held our traditional pricing strategies. We aren't jumping up, jumping down at extremes, and the hope is that the rest of the industry follows suit. And I've seen a lot of brands actually surprisingly hold rate in a lot of regards. And I think that's the way to go. Until things are a little more predictable, just let's hold some of our pricing strategies. I think a lot of our hotels have taken this time to do some small renovations that are guest facing. So owners who had a little capital on hand, they were smart and said, all right, how can we do certain things that when people are back, we've done a positive in guest facing renos. Another part of trying to survive is more on the food and beverage side. Number one, we've kind of evaluated all of our F&B outlets and making sure the branding and the messaging and the food concepts and the safety protocols are all aligned for now and the future, because I don't think a lot of those things are going away. More importantly, we've put a lot of energy into technology on the carryout experience. I have to admit, we really didn't have that many carryout strategies, and especially on the tech side, in place, because people were just coming to our restaurants and guests were staying. So we have put a significant effort into carryout technology, because again, we don't think that necessarily is going to go all the way when things recover. And so those are kind of the things we're trying to survive through that actually we think won't go away once things recover.
It's funny, Michael, just kind of a side note. I'm kind of predisposed to be a germaphobe anyway, and I haven't eaten at a buffet in about 15 years. And everybody's been looking at me like in 15 years, like, well, I'm just going to do that. And I like to think I'm ahead of the time right now when you talk about.
You're a pioneer.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I think, and I agree with all of that. Absolutely. The food and beverage thing is very, very key, and how to think about it differently. And Michael mentioned it before, just the meeting space alone, where you had 400 people in a meeting before, it's down to 100 now or something. And, that doesn't appear to be changing anytime soon. So all of a sudden you've got to kind of think about your business mix differently, because you didn't go out and build more meeting space during the pandemic to accommodate. So it's a little bit of a challenge.
The last question I have for you guys, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, is when do you see the pandemic ending? And when do you think the industry will begin to bounce back? Because you're doing all these preparations, but you can't, you're really shooting in the dark at this point.
True. And there are smarter people than me that can make those predictions, but I can tell you, it's no surprise that confidence in air travel is going to be key. I might make a political statement, but we have to get past the elections. We have to get past the politicians and the media pundits on both sides, because it's become such a divisive, polarizing issue that affects confidence, and it contributes to the confusion. We're kind of internally planning that this year is kind of a write-off, and I don't want to say write-off in terms of minimizing costs, but maximizing revenue. We're trying to do the best we can, but I do think that for planning purposes for us, we're kind of thinking that we're going to have a bit of a rough Q1, maybe a bit of a rebound in Q2, but we feel pretty confident about the second half of next year. It's whether it be vaccine or therapeutics or whatever. I think that people will get used to the new normal, and I think they're going to have to. There's, people are too impatient. People need to be out there. People need to be making money. They need to be traveling. And I don't think that we're going to be sitting here a year from today wondering where the business is. It's not going to be back to 2019, but I think that we're going to have a little bit more confidence this time next year.
Yeah, first of all, well said. And I agree. I don't think many people, there's a lot of people that just are not going to travel until a vaccine's in place or the mainstream media begins to report maybe some positive trends or news or factual data. And that's on both sides. And I agree on the news and the politics. It couldn't hurt us more, because it definitely affects confidence. And especially when, you turn it on one channel and they say one thing, and then on another and they say something else. It's so confusing. And I think until there's a actual, yes, we have a vaccine, and yes, it's positive news, I don't see much coming back, especially related to the flying patterns. I think as an industry, to us, and it's maybe a little less optimistic, and man, I hope Chris right, is I think 2023 seems to be our full year mark. We believe we'll see glimpses of 2019 in all of our seasonal markets next summer, and really think that there'll be a rolling 12-month performance for heavy leisure markets that return to baseline, I think, between 21 and 22. Thankfully, a lot of our hotels are secondary markets, remote destinations, resorts that are all leisure heavy. And so we feel pretty confident about that. What I can tell you, and I don't have a crystal ball either, is I'm really worried for the heavy group business. I don't think it ever comes back to the way it was in 18 and 19. And I hope I'm wrong there. Maybe group business optimizes and gets back up in 23, 24. I just am, for those big group houses and major city destinations, I just don't see it coming back even post-vaccine for quite a while. And that's a scary thought. But again, I hope I'm wrong on that. I do, like I said, on a positive note, see some cool things from a leisure standpoint. I mean, even this year, even in losing occupancy in some of our seasonal markets, we actually beat NOI year over year, just being real smart on expenses. And so hopefully that continues. And I think, just in general, until things come back, we got to continue to fine tune our service and programming. And that's what we've done at all of our hotels. We still, as an independent hotelier company, we got to deliver that creative service and amenities and programming in a COVID world. So even examples like French Quarter Inn, it's here in Charleston, actually second year in a row got #1 hotel on TripAdvisor. And they did these lavish wine and cheeses and these lavish creative food and beverage components throughout the day. Well, now we're not doing any of that, but we're actually delivering components of that direct to rooms. So our labor is extremely high. It's exhaustingly high, but we're also coming lower in food costs. So if you can find things like that where you're still elevating service to some level and figure out a way to at least break even or don't lose money, I think that's a good solve for the next, 6 to 12 months while this all gets figured out.
Yeah, and I agree on the group business. It's going to be a bit of a challenge for a while, especially with the constraints on people in meetings and what they can attend, and just we need to think about the business differently on a go forward basis. We have taken some time to look at ourselves internally It's not a difficult business, but it is going to have to be serviced differently. We're looking at all of our internal programs and processes and say, let's just get all the stuff that doesn't make a difference out of the way. Let's use this time to kind of regroup, rethink, and be able to prepare and try to be ahead, or at least with the new way of doing business. And I absolutely concur with Michael's comments. I think he did a good job of articulating that.
Well, guys, thank you so much for hopping on this call and sharing your thoughts, and hopefully I'll be able to see you in person soon.
Well,
thanks, guys.
Thank you guys again.
Hey, Michael, thank you.
This was
Look
great.
forward to meeting you as well soon.
Likewise, man. See you.
Take care.
All right, take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Lodging on Demand. If you want more content like this, please subscribe to our channel. Or you can listen to Lodging on Demand as a podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify.